Hey, it's Kristen, and I want to walk you through some of the features you'll be receiving from my Procreate Lettering Bundle. First, let's look at how to import the files into the Procreate app. Once you've downloaded your files to whatever program you use, it could be Dropbox, the files directly on your iPad, or Google Drive, or whatever iCloud or system you use. I'm using Dropbox and I'm going to open up one of the practice worksheets. So in the top right, tap the three dots and then find the export option. So we're going to export this straight to Procreate. So tap the Procreate icon, copy to Procreate, and this is going to open right in your Procreate app. There it is. So just tap to open that, and there's one of our practice worksheets. So well, before we do the layers and the practice sheets, let me show you how to import the brushes. Just like we brought in the practice worksheets, you're going to find where you saved your brushes. And again, I'm going to show you from Dropbox. So just find the file where your brushes are and tap on that, three dots in the top right, and then choose export. Copy to Procreate, and this is going to automatically send that set of brushes to your brush library. And there it is, lettering. And you can see I have two because obviously I already had my set in there and I just imported a new set. So next up, I'm going to show you color palettes. Oh wait, before we do color palettes, let me show you the textures that come with the color palettes. So within Dropbox, I have several different types of files for you. There are JPEGs, a zip file, and Procreate files. And to be able to open zipped files on the iPad, you're going to need an additional app. And the app is free. You can get several apps, but I like the one that is the orange app here. It is called File Explorer, and it's free in the App Store. There are other ones too, but this is my favorite. So you're just going to tap on the zipped file, the three dots up in the top right, export, and this time you're going to choose the File Explorer icon. Now within File Explorer, it's asking where you want to save the files to. So I choose the local and then downloads and then tap save. So now this imported the zip file. So now to unzip it, just tap it and choose the first option that says archive. And there it gives you a normal folder with your files in it. Now from here, if you want to save them from this app, you're going to select the ones that you want, and in the bottom tap more and then share, and then it's going to ask you where you want to share it to. You can copy it straight to Procreate, and then if you go back out of this into your gallery, you can see that it put it here for us. And now if we don't want to use the zipped file and just want to use the files themselves, you can go back into where you have your file saved, and there are three JPEG files that you can use any way you like. But if you just tap on one, an individual one, three dots, and then export, it's going to ask you where you want to save it. So you can copy that straight to Procreate or any of the apps that allow you to import photos. You can also choose the open in, and this is what I like to do because I save it to my shared albums in my iCloud. I have sorted folders, like this one is backgrounds and textures, so that's where I post all of my textures and background images too. If you tap on the next one, you can choose export again, or you can save it straight to your photos on your tablet. Or you can copy to Procreate again. It's up to you how you want to import it. So if I choose open in, again, it's going to let me pick where I want to open it. So I'm going to add to Procreate, and that's going to send that file straight over to Procreate. And let's just do the rose glitter right away, pink glitter, and open in, and then we'll choose copy to Procreate this time. Either one works. So now if I back out into my gallery, you can see that, well, it doesn't give you a preview until you tap on it. There's the pink glitter, and then that should be, yep, that's the a gray denim. So there are your 3 images imported into Procreate. Now I'm going to show you a different way you can import files. So if you're, let's go back to Procreate, and from the bottom you can swipe up to bring up your dock, and then press and hold where your files are and drag it up to either the left or right side of Procreate, and it's going to have both programs open. Now you want to make sure your palettes are open in the Procreate so you can drag the file straight over into those palettes. And here's one that I have 3 palettes, all 3 palettes on one palette, but I also have them separated out separately like this for you. So you can drag each one over individually and just drop it where you want it. So there's the Rosé palette, and then let's bring over the Macaroon palette. And with each one I have a, whoops, you can delete that by pressing and holding. I also have a white and black option because I like to use white and black a lot within my designs, and I just like to have it easily accessible. But they are, all 3 are here on one, so you can just add black and white to that. So let me find white and then go back to, whoops, go back to the palettes and find where that is, and then tap white. And now you have all 3 palettes plus black and white in one palette. And if you set that to default, then you have them all ready to use for you. And then just swipe that file section away and you're ready to go. Now let's pick a color we want to use, because now we're going to get into how to letter on these practice sheets. So if you tap on your layers icon, you can see there are 3 different styles. There's fancy, trendy, and simple, and they're all locked. You can see the little lock icon. So that means that you can't accidentally write on that layer. So you can see what happens if I try to write on it. So let's go back and tap on the layer above it. Choose a brush that you like, and let's just go with the plain brush right now. This is the brush that I use to letter it with, and I usually like to have my brush set around 8%. And I'm going to zoom in and just start lettering right on top of the practice. Now, when you're lettering, you can see my lines are a little wobbly. Well, Procreate has this new feature. Let me show you. If you draw a shape such as an oval and hold it, you can see it snaps into like a perfect oval shape. And same thing with lines. So if that line is a little wobbly or really curvy, you just hold it and it will make a quick line for you, a quick shape. Same thing for curves, arcs, circles, squares, so you can have really nice, crisp looking lines. Or you can continue with, the shaky look, because that's how you're going to be able to improve your lettering. So now let me undo some of these, and if you use 3 fingers and scrub your screen, it will get rid of everything on that layer for you. Just erase the whole layer. So let me go in and use a different color for each one, just to kind of give you an idea of how you can use the palettes. You can do different colors for each one, or you can, every time you have to lift your pen, you can change colors, because this kind of trains you to lift your pen in between strokes to get more of a lettering effect versus a handwriting effect. And by not using these handy Procreate features, you're going to be able to see the growth that happens when your lines are shaky to the improvements that you're going to get from practice. Now let's bring in some of those fun textures to our lettering, and I'll show you how to create some clipping masks. Now we're going to choose the wrench and add, and then choose insert a photo. Now you can see here's my backgrounds and textures that I save everything to, and find one that you like. Now if you press and hold the arrow, you can resize the whole canvas to see that your gold is covering all of the letters. And once it is, you're going to go back into your layers, and we want to have this gold layer on top of the layer that we're going to be writing on. So I'm going to add a new layer below the gold layer, and tap the gold layer and select clipping mask. Now when we write on the layer below it, it's going to be masked by the gold layer. So you can choose any color to do this with. I'm choosing black. And now when I write, it's going to show up as the gold texture, which is a really, really fun and neat trick that I use all the time in my lettering designs. Now let's go take a look at some of the different pens we have. So I'm going to get rid of that layer and go back into our brushes, and let's try a different brush, because you don't have to use the plain brush. You can use any of these brushes. Let's look at the glittery or the watercolor brush. And I'm going to choose a different color. Let's go with the lilac purple or pink. And again, I'm going to check the size of my brush. And this is a pressure sensitive brush, which means light pressure is going to have thin strokes, and when you push down hard with heavy pressure, you're going to get the thick strokes. So with brush lettering, when your stroke is coming towards you or down, you want to have a heavy stroke, and when your pen is moving up or away from you, you want to have a light stroke. And that's what gives the nice brush lettering look to your letters. So this is what that brush looks like. Let me turn off these other layers so you can kind of see what the letters look like without the practice sheet behind it. Okay, so let's take a look at the trendy style now. So I'm going to turn off the simple layer and open up the trendy layer. And you can see this trendy style to fit with the modern calligraphy style is light strokes and heavy strokes. So I created this with the Modern AF calligraphy brush. This is my all-time favorite brush. I use it for almost all of my designs. And let's pick a fun color. And again, I have to be on the right layer and not the locked layer. See, this is what's good about those locked layers. It doesn't let you write on the practice pages. So, too big of a brush. Let me resize that. Again, to about 8% is my norm. And I'm just going to go over, and don't worry so much about following the lines that are there. Those are just guides. You can, go ahead and create your own style and do whatever is comfortable for you. Now, another trick is when you're doing a line, and if you do it fast, you might get like these sort of wonky, I don't know if you could see, like the end of the brush isn't, or the beginning of the brush doesn't start out nicely. But if you draw back up that line, you can see it kind of curves off nicely. Same thing with going down. So if I start below it, draw up and then down, and then draw a little bit back up again, you can see it's a much nicer line. So that is one of my little tricks when Procreate isn't acting right. You can also go in and play with the pressure settings, but that might mess up some of your other brushes. So this little trick is, I think personally, far more, there we go. See how you draw up and then draw back down on top of the line. So I think it's just far more easy and part of my lettering process to do that instead of playing with all of the settings all of the time. So there is that one. And a similar brush is the shadowed brush. And this one is fun because I created a drop shadow directly in it. So this is also pressure sensitive. So as you're drawing, it's the same idea, but now there's a little lighter grayed out dropped shadow behind it. Now there are ways you can create drop shadows in your lettering, but if you don't want to mess around with that and just want a brush that already has it included, this one's perfect for that. Another brush is, let's try the Copperplate brush. Again, pressure sensitive. And I actually use the Copperplate brush all of the time in my fancy style lettering. And let's go into the chalky, which gives it a little bit of a chalk look. Again, pressure sensitive. All of the brushes including in this are all pressure sensitive with the exception of the plain brush and the stamped grid brushes. And right now we're using colors, but I want to show you, if you choose white, what the chalk brush can actually look like with a black background. So I'm just going to go in and write with my chalk in a white color. And then I'm going to go in and add a dark background so you can see what the chalk brush actually really looks like when it's used as it's meant to, as a chalk brush. Okay, so we have that in white. Now underneath that layer, I want to add another layer, and I have some chalkboard saved, but let me just show you. If you just fill that layer with black, or you know what, let's do green, like the old green chalkboards. And go to that layer and then tap fill layer to get the green, and then you're going to drag the chalk to the top, and you can see that it has more of a chalky look. Now I'm going to insert a photo and go to my backgrounds where I have my photos of chalkboard saved. Here's just one of them. So now you can kind of see what that could look like on top of a chalkboard background. Let's look at another brush. We're going to try out the brushy marker, which I feel, whoops, let me make sure I'm on the right size settings, which is about 8%. And this one sort of has the feel of a Tombow dual brush marker. Again, with the thins and thicks depending on the pressure that you're putting on the brush. And next, let's go back to the watercolory brush. And this one has a lot of jagged edges and some blotchiness within it to mimic watercolors. It is different than the free watercolor set that I have available. And let me go ahead and change the color. And because this brush does have a transparency to it, you can play with the layers or adding colors on top. This one I'm just kind of outlining it, just playing around with it to give it more of a fun and loose kind of quirky style. Next up is the glittery brush. And the way this brush works is if you, let me turn that down a little bit. If you're using light pressure, you're going to have, here's light pressure up and heavy pressure down. So you can see not only the thickness of the strokes changes, but also the size of the glitter changes. And this brush is fun to use not just within your lettering, but within your designs as well. You can turn the brush all the way up and get some really interesting glitter designs to create backgrounds for. It just might look like spilled glitter. Next up, let's try the, let's see, we did that one, we did shadowed, Sketchy. We haven't done Sketchy yet. And Sketchy is supposed to act like a pencil brush, so I love using this just in my lettering because the light strokes are really light and the heavy strokes are really dark, sort of like a soft lead pencil. And I love using this when I am going in and creating sketches of my designs or layouts. And let me just show you what I mean. So I'm going to choose black and on a blank canvas, just start sketching something out with my sketchy brush. And I'm just going to quickly do a circle. And this is meant to be loose and messy as a sort of like a concept sketch. This isn't, by any means like a final of what I would do. It's just kind of getting my ideas out on paper and brainstorming things. So after this is done, I usually reduce the opacity and then do my actual drawing straight over it. And as you can see, if you use the side of the Apple Pencil, it acts like a real pencil by giving you that thickness. You can also get thin lines, and like a soft lead pencil, you can have dark or lighter lines. So I'm just going to erase that, and let's get into looking at how some of these grid lines work. Now, the first one, grid, is a square grid, and it is not pressure sensitive, but it is acts like a pen, so you can actually draw on it as opposed to just stamping a grid on. Then I like to go in and tap the end to turn down the opacity. I turn that really far down, add a layer on top, and then I grab my sketchy pen and start to draw my letters. This grid comes in handy when I'm doing any type of 3D lettering because it helps to keep my letters consistent. And I use the grid boxes to kind of, I'll count how many boxes. So this, for example, is 5 boxes high. I want all my letters to be 5 boxes high. And that gives me, a guideline to follow, which is nice, and it keeps everything neat and consistent. And I can use the side of the pencil to go back and shade it to kind of get a look of what it would look like all filled in. Now we're going to check out, let's look at the lined guides. This brush is a stamp brush, but it's also acts as a drawing brush. So if you just tap the screen, you get the 4 lines that you can then go in and resize or move it around how you like. If you want to duplicate this layer, just swipe the layer to the left, tap duplicate, and then you can move that set down and continue that throughout the page. But instead of going through all that work, the way I made this brush was to start from the top and just pull your pen down and hold it in a place so it snaps into straight lines. And when you let go, you will have a full page of lines without having to go through and do all that duplicating. If you select the arrow again, you can size it up or down to your preferred writing size. And one of the things that I like to do is change the colors of my lines. So to do that, you can start off by using the color you want, but most times I forget. So if you go in and choose Select on the layer, go in and find the color that you want it to be, and I'm just going to choose a bright light blue. Create a new layer, tap it again, and then choose Fill Layer. That is going to change the lines blue. And then I turn the opacity really far down so the lines are really very faint. And again, I'm just going to grab my Sketchy pencil. Whoops, let me put that to black so I can see it better. And sticking with the love theme, just pencil in using the lines as my guides. So let's erase this and move on to the dotted grid. This one is really fun because it reminds me of a bullet journaling template. So again, this is a stamp, so you can just tap the screen. Right now this opacity is down, but if you turn it up you can see it gets much darker. But I like to have my dots pretty well grayed out, so I turn the opacity down. And I'm just going to choose the plain pen because if I wanted to do a bullet journal layout, you can see, let's just take the first month, January, but I need a new layer here. So I'm just going to use the dotted grid as my guides for my letters. And this helps me to keep my lettering consistent, as will all of the other guides. This is really one of the tools that I absolutely have to use in my lettering. I'm helpless without them. And again, you can do the quick line just by drawing a line and holding it in place to get a nice straight line, and create some little to-do boxes or notes boxes, create your calendar templates. So again, this dot grid is very useful for more than just lettering if you're into journaling or creating any kind of planners. Now let's get rid of that layer and go in and check out the Guidelines brush. This one is similar to the grid brush as far as it being a stamp, but these squares are on an angle. So if you're writing on a slant, this guideline will be very helpful. And when I'm writing on a slant, I like to actually angle the canvas. And I'm going to choose the Modern Calligraphy pen, turn down the opacity on my grid lines, and then open a new layer above it to letter on. One of the things that I struggle with without these guidelines is keeping my letters on a consistent slant. So I'm going to go ahead and write the word love again, trying to keep all of the letters parallel to each other. And I do that by following these slanted guides. I try to make sure all of my letters are on that same parallel. So if you're writing, oftentimes what my lettering will look like if I don't have these guidelines is something like this, where the letters aren't all on the same space line. So they're kind of bouncy, but not in the good way. And also, I'm going to use pink to show you, if I draw a straight line through the direction of these letters, you can see that they are not parallel and they're all just going willy-nilly different directions. They're not all nicely lined up with the guides. So this is why I think guidelines are crucial in keeping your lettering looking consistent. So now with that in mind, I'm going to go in and try to write the word love again, following the angles of the guidelines. And it looks much better than the one above it. So that is those guidelines. Now there's a similar one that I'm going to show you, which is called Copperplate Guidelines. And these are similar, but the angle is stronger. The angle is on a 55-degree angle, and I like to use the matching Copperplate brush that goes with this. So again, I'm going to turn down the opacity of that and add a new layer on top to write on. And I like to zoom in really far with this one. But Copperplate is generally written on a 55-degree angle. And they're more in an oval shape. So let me just draw my capital L with a little bit of a flourish there. And again, I'm trying to keep all of my letters and my flourishes along that 55-degree angle. Okay, so now you can see if I draw lines that I kept those letters consistently along the 55-degree parallel. And that's it for the grid lines. So let's go back into our lettering worksheets and to the third one, which is a fancy style of lettering. This is made after the copperplate style of calligraphy, where it has very thin, delicate upstrokes and thicker downstrokes, and the letters are more of an oval shaped as opposed to a round shape, and a very kind of timeless style of calligraphy. So I do like to use the Copperplate brush pen with this one, but you're not limited to that pen by any means. You can even go in and use the plain brush pen, monoline pen I mean, and have fun with it and just kind of learn the basic shapes of the letters. So if I turn this off, the practice part, you can see how nice that lettering looks without the practice sheet behind it. So there you have it, all of the features and how to use them for the Ultimate Procreate Lettering Bundle. I hope you enjoy it.